I really wish there was a way for me to see you and have my notes.
I started recording the audio. I have not started recording the video.
Who's going to line that up?
Now it started. Hi, Marcus. Sorry about that.
I hate you.
Please don't leave that in. Please cut that.
He's not going to cut anything.
He's going to cut things? Mm-mm. Hi, everybody.
Welcome back.
And we're also on video. So if you're hearing the audio only version, we're waving at you. Hi.
Hello. If you're hearing the audio version, go to YouTube and check out the uncut video.
For episode 16.
Yes, where we will be talking about Charlemagne's son, Louis the Pious.
Yep.
So it's been a while.
Yes, and the problem here is I just need to hide the video.
So you don't stare at yourself?
Stare at myself, the whole thing.
It's distracting.
It is deeply distracting, you guys. It's bad.
So if you've checked in on our YouTube at all, our story episodes, we started doing video on them for 6 and 7. Mm-hmm. So listen to them on the podcast, but then go check out the unedited version on YouTube at AVersion TV.
Yes. So. And we definitely have all of the mishaps on there.
We tried to
it is unedited.
Spare you from them, but
yes, the story that you guys get from the podcast is
so much.
It's so lovely. There's music, there's background noise. I've changed voices. Like, I worked so hard on making that sound like a story.
Mm-hmm. It does not get recorded that way.
No, it doesn't. Like, not at all.
Yeah. So check both of them out because
they're pretty good.
Both versions.
So from now on, we're going to be we're going to be recording.
We can't cut that stuff anymore.
I know. You're stuck with it, guys. I'm sorry. You're stuck with it if you're on YouTube.
Yes. Because we're still going to cut it out of the...
I'm still going to cut some stuff.
My nose, and it's like because I know I'm on video, my nose itches all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And because I know I'm on video, I'm like, awkward face.
Nah, it's not bad. We're used to the video by now.
Yeah, we're totally used to it. It's fine.
Anyway,
let's get into it.
So we're back today after a very, very long break, which we already talked about in Charlemagne, but then the world shut down.
Yep.
So we could not get to our new studio. But now we're back up and running. Our, by the time you're listening to this,
we will be in Arkansas.
We will be in Arkansas.
Yes.
But story 6 will have gone.
Yep. Just a couple days earlier.
Live.
July 1st.
Yes.
It is scheduled and already edited. I feel very ahead of myself.
You're so accomplished.
I'm just going to tell you all the behind the scenes things because I can't cut it now. So I'm just like telling you all of the things.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So if you haven't listened to Charlemagne, we did a 2-parter on him. So go check him out. Today we're talking about Louis the Pious, who is Charlemagne's son. And he is our, 4th king of the... 3rd king of the Carolingian dynasty.
Yep.
So kicked off by Charles Martel, who was never a king. He was always a mayor, right?
Charles the Hammer.
The Hammer.
Chuck Martel, the Hammer.
Yeah, that's it. His son Pepin ruled from 752 to 768. And then his 2 sons, Carloman and Charlemagne, ruled after that. So...
Yes. And the only thing I remember about those 2, I mean, I remember a lot of things about Charlemagne.
It's just that it's been a minute.
I really struggled to say Charlemagne and Charlemagne. And I mean...
You failed it.
I'm pretty sure there's bloopers at the end of that episode where it's just me...
Also, we just had to leave it in.
Attempting. Multiple times. Yeah. I couldn't be fixed. And now you guys have the
I think I even
can't
corrected
be
you a
fixed.
bunch, and then I even screwed it up at one point.
I think you did.
Yeah, I did.
But I cut it out because I thought it was funnier that you always said it right and I couldn't.
No, I don't think you did. I think you didn't catch it. And there's one
It's also
in
possible.
the complete episode.
I like to pretend like I'm very clever.
I'm like, no, it's Charlemagne.
I have a vague memory of that.
Okay, it's been a minute. Okay, so today we're talking about Louis the Pious. He is the oldest surviving son of Charlemagne. So he inherited the vast kingdom
Of the Franks.
of his father. I am your father. In solidarity with the
Star
background.
Wars behind her.
behind me.
Which, yeah, anyway. So we are in a gamer's studio recording.
So, we joined a network called AVersion TV.
Yes, we did.
And the
owners of the studio,
their podcast is...
ANX Gamecast.
Yeah, and they are all about games, hence the
And Marvel and reviewing games.
background. Oh, I just hit my mic. So, anyway.
And if you haven't checked it out, look them up, ANX Gamecast, or find us on YouTube under our network, AVersion TV, which is lovely and right up there.
Somewhere.
There.
Clarissa also did a guest episode with them.
I did.
Is that live yet? Mm-hmm. Okay. It's up there on YouTube, so go check it out. I will be doing one soon.
It might already be out by the time this gets aired.
Could be.
Yep.
So check that out also.
In my episode, I share stories of GoldenEye and 20-year-old references, which gets pointed out to me pretty quickly that I am not a gamer. It's like, so what have you played lately? And I'm like, GoldenEye?
Have you?
I mean, like a couple years ago, I played the Switch a little bit more, but I didn't think Jeopardy constituted as a game.
Definitely a game.
Outside of Mario.
'Cause
I talked about Mario all the time, but that's all I got.
Jeopardy. So
It's just that it's
Clarissa
true.
beat me the last 2 times, so I don't want to hear the whining. All right, back to
did beat
Louis.
you.
Louis the Pious was
Louis the
born
Pious.
in 778.
Also-
April 16th, to be exact. Sorry.
Good job.
Also what?
Also known as the fair
Don't
and
steal that from
debonair.
Dare you? Has it been so long?
Uncut, guys. You get to hear it all.
I am dumbfounded that you just...
I just thought it was
Robbed
going
me
to
of
go.
that.
I thought it was going to be like, here, we can do it again. Do it.
You know I do names.
Go.
Louis the First,
Oh.
the Pious,
The Pious.
the Debonair. In French, Louis le Pieux,
Oh.
or Louis le Debonair.
Ho ho.
In German, Ludwig der Fromm.
No
That's
comment.
it. That's all I got.
Oh, okay.
But you robbed me of it. So anyway, he was born April 16th, 778 in Chasseneuil.
I just assumed you had that down and I didn't even like.
Chasseneuil.
Cool. Cool.
Near Poitiers in Aquitaine, which is now France.
Now present day?
Present day France.
False.
France. To Charlemagne and his, was it his second wife?
First wife.
First, no. Hildegard.
His first wife.
Can't remember that stuff. We took such a long break.
We did. And honestly, I'm not certain of that. Although
You said it very confidently.
I did. And here's the thing, guys. You probably call me out on a lot of stuff and I'm still going to be like, no, really.
No, but this is true.
And then you'd hand me like the proof.
I think you mean
Oops.
like Dookie.
Except you were wrong because it is Dutchy.
I disagree.
Google disagrees with you.
Google doesn't know everything.
Ah, but they know Dutchy versus Dookie.
So says you.
So says the interwebs.
Yes, because the interwebs is never wrong.
Ever.
However, back to Louis. So born in, present day France on April 16th, 778. This is...
Oh, she's throwing it over to me now.
Throwing it to you.
So, Louis, at only 3 years old in 781, became king of Aquitaine. That is the region south by the Pyrenees. So if you're looking at like, ooh, you can actually see my hands this time, which might help with the visuals when I'm attempting to explain stuff.
I did not think about that because we are very visual and then we have to explain it and it doesn't translate well.
Maybe we'd actually get some maps to pop up here next time we do this. Yes. Maybe we could be prepared for our episode.
We'll be so prepared next time.
No promises. Come on.
One of the next 10 times we'll be really prepared.
Eventually, this is going to go really smoothly and you're all going to be so
really
pumped.
Enjoy it.
Yes. We're going to lose everybody from Spotify and they're all going to come to YouTube.
Yeah, hopefully.
So if you're looking at Francia and like Germany and France, and then there's that peninsula that goes down to Spain. Not peninsula, because I think Spain is the peninsula.
Yes.
So there's like a bridge there where the Pyrenees mountains are. And so Aquitaine is kind of in that southern western side of France.
Okay.
Down by the
Before you
Basques.
get to Spain. This makes sense in my head. I know probably.
No, but I mean, it makes sense to me because we know what we're talking about, but I have provided you,
One
the
day
listener,
there will be
with
this map
nothing.
flashing so you know what we're talking about too.
I'll make it happen. Anywho, so he was crowned king of Aquitaine at only 3 years old.
He was, while Charlemagne was still living. Because didn't Charlemagne, they had a history in the last few Carolingians of having to name their sons king of, usually Aquitaine, but like a portion of the kingdom so they weren't like sole.
So the big issue was the nobles in Aquitaine and the northeastern side of like what is now like Germany area. They kept revolting. Like it was constant.
The king was so far away.
Yeah. So their king was like in the center of Francia almost. But it was really hard for him to venture off and actually rule anything on
Francia
either
right
side.
now is like almost all of present day Europe.
Yeah.
Even
It's
down
huge.
into Italy.
Yeah. Touches the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then down into Spain until you hit the
Pyrenees Mountains, something like that.
What were they called?
The Basques.
Are they?
I don't know.
Anyway, hit those guys.
So,
Sorry, we don't pay attention to our episodes any more than you do.
You're lost, we're lost, and we did the research. Don't consider us experts. We are here to entertain and delight.
Only.
And you might learn something, but that's really an accident.
But we hope you retain it because we don't.
So the reason he was sent off at 3 years old was partly to do with what you just described on the nobles fighting back, basically. And part of the reason they always fought back is because if you think about what she just said with Europe, think of how many different cultures are involved in Europe, right?
Today.
So even just today, you've got France over here, and then you have a lot of small countries now. And then you've got Germany, you've got
Austria, Spain, Switzerland, Poland. Like you've got a lot of
different, and it all, like she said, it expands down to Italy where the Lombards are. And there's drastically different fashion, speech, ways they behave.
Even today at that top part of Italy, there's a city that still speaks only German.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow.
I know.
Probably from the days of yore.
Of yesteryear. You don't know it, but we used to have a business called Yesteryear.
We did. This is not our first venture.
We try so hard.
But I feel like this one is specifically better.
It is. More relevant.
Right. So, the point being, he was sent off at such a young age. Charlemagne did this constantly with his sons. He's not the first one. Louis is just the one that survived and became king. And he was sent off. He was, I think, the youngest that was sent away to rule, so that he would be brought up in that culture. So
I don't want to get ahead of myself.
No, go ahead.
But that is one thing I found very, very fascinating about Louis is eventually we'll get to his sons that inherit. And he did the same thing. He sent each one of them to live and grow up in the culture that they were going to be ruling over, so that they were very well educated in the culture that they were supposed to rule in.
Mm-hmm. And they discussed a point where he shows up. So in 785, this is jumping ahead a bit, but his grandmother, Hildegard, dies in 785. And his father, Charlemagne, went to remarry per the customs of that time. And Louis shows up in court, and he's only like 8.
Wait. His grandmother, Hildegard, I think you mean his mother's name is Hildegard.
You're right. That is his mother.
Yeah. That was confusing.
My bad.
His
mother, his mama, Hildegard, dies in 785, and his father, Charlemagne, had to remarry.
Yes.
And sent for Lucy. He sent for Louis.
And now we have our nickname.
He was supposed to appear in court, and at that point, he was only 8 years old. He arrived dressed in the Basque's costume, and they called it a costume, but the point was he showed up with all these other youths, or probably like noblemen's sons.
It wasn't a costume. It was the cultural, like now you might see, like, I'm sorry, I used like 10 times. Now, if you went to, say, Japan, they'll have festivals for something like the geishas. You know, it's a very cultural centered form of dress. So he dressed up in this very cultural centered form of dress from where
along
he
with
grew
the people
up.
where he grew up.
Exactly.
And it was said to have made like a very good impression, because the Basque of Vasconia were where they based their Aquitanian army warfare on. Like they dressed that way. So it was very fashionable for him to show up like that. And it basically meant he was accepting that culture. And it may not be where he was born, but that was the point, was that he was able to identify with the people he was ruling.
Yes.
And hopefully not have people revolting all the time.
Right, because they feel like
could
they're
hold on
one
to
of,
Frankie.
he's one of them. Yeah, for sure. So at some point he marries his first wife. Do we know when that happened?
I do. So when you turned 16, what did you get for your birthday?
Not a car.
I got a car. However,
I think I already had a car.
Louis got 4 villas.
I would take 4 villas.
I know, right?
If I knew now what I knew at 16.
If only. Although it could have also been like a honeymoon wedding present, because that's
Also
when he
got
married.
To Ermengarde of Hesbea.
Hesbea in 794.
In 794. With Ermengarde, he had 6 children, 3 girls, 3 boys. Lothaire, born in 795. Pepin, born in 797. 3 girls who no one documents.
No, they never document the daughters unless they marry someone super important, and then that's all you know.
Yeah, exactly. So Adelaide, 799, Rotrud, 800, Hildegard, 802, and then the youngest son, Louis the German, in 806.
So Daddy Charlemagne dies in 814.
Yes.
Right? It's very sad.
As we mentioned.
And Louis
Last episode.
did not waste any time
Why would you?
trying to make sure he took over the entire empire, which was his. So
As the oldest living son.
and he did. He took over everything except for the Lombards in Italy. That stayed with his nephew, Bernard, who was Louis's brother.
Lewis.
Hot dog.
Lewis. We went with Lewis.
See, this is what you don't have to hear in the actual podcast is me. Here's the thing. I don't really do well reading out loud.
Spelling is also not a strong suit for her.
Just don't look at my notes. It'll make everyone's life easier.
But they also go hand in hand because the notes become very hard to read.
For other people. So let me try.
Louis, she means Louis.
Let me try that again.
Please.
So, in 814, Charlemagne died and Louis inherited the entire Carolingian Empire.
Did you happen to just call him Charlemagne?
Good God.
I heard Charlemagne. Charlemagne dies 814. Louis wastes no time
Taking the entire Carolingian Empire, except for the Lombards in Italy. That stayed with his nephew, Bernard, who was Louis' brother Pepin's son, a.k.a. nephew.
Did that require explanation?
It just was really hard for me to say correctly.
So impressive, though.
So Charlemagne actually gave Bernard that region the year prior. So he had only had it for a small amount of time, but Louis, when he took over, was like, well, you can go ahead and keep it since my dad gave it to you, whatever.
Because he was actually named king while Charlemagne was still alive.
Yes. So the year before Charlemagne died is when Bernardo, I keep wanting to call him Bernardo now.
Because of Bernardo del Carpio.
Yes. Who you won't hear anything about now because we changed.
Spoilers.
We changed things. Anywho. So, when he became king, he arrives at his imperial court and was greeted with suspicion and anxiety on both sides. Dun, dun, dun. We're so on key with that. So first things first, when you're crowned a king, it's time to kick out the undesirables. What, might you ask, constitutes an undesirable?
Well, can I?
Have at it.
Me. So, right before Charlemagne died, he was doing this very, trying to, I think at one point, we are not really a Christian society, and was trying to really rein back in everything into these Christian morals. So he kind of, started, didn't really do anything with it. But Louis comes in, and he's like, all right, we're going head on with this. So he starts purging court.
Interesting. So an undesirable would be pagan tokens or texts, which his father had collected. So let's go ahead and destroy history, which is never a good idea.
It's never a good idea, good or bad. At least put it in a museum somewhere.
Right. Lock it away.
Except for people. Learn from it, good or bad.
Yeah. So he also got rid of the court members who were morally dissolute. And being his female relative didn't help either because...
Well, he first exiled all of the prostitutes that were allowed at court. And even some of the females that were noble women that were at court, including...
his own half-sisters and nieces. And at least they went to nunneries. But still.
After having interacted with nobles in a prostitutional manner, they were sent to nunneries.
Yep.
And the men.
Yes.
Some of them were tonsured and sent to monasteries.
Which were his father's cousins, who were specifically, one of them was Walla, who was very loyal to him before he became king.
Yeah.
And just because he was his father's cousin and he had some form of a claim, he didn't want him trying to take anything over. So he initially has them tonsured and sent to monasteries and sends them away. So he basically does a full clean sweep.
Cleanse,
and gets rid.
a purge.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then something happened. On April 9th, 817, just 3 years into his reign. It was a Maundy Thursday when it happened. And
What's a Maundy Thursday?
It is the Thursday before Easter.
I thought
where they commemorate the washing of the feet and the Last Supper. I'd never heard of it either.
Me neither.
So Louis and company were on their merry way, crossing a wooden gallery from the cathedral to the palace in Aachen, when the gallery collapsed, killing many. I know I said that in such a pleasant tone, and then I'm
Killing
like,
very
Jeff.
many. Killing a lot of people.
So many people died.
Lots of people died.
Oh, but Lewis didn't.
Lewis.
Duh.
Lewis did not die.
But Louis didn't. Having barely survived and feeling the imminent danger of his death, began planning for his succession. 3 months later, among the approval of his court and clergy, he issued the imperial decree of 18 chapters called, I will not even attempt to say it, all Caitlin.
Let me get there. Hold on. Also, this is I think, the most interesting thing about him. It has since been called, and it was not called this at the time, but since been called Ordinatio Imperii. At the time, they called it Divisio Imperii. But
do you know what it means?
Basically is, I don't know a literal translation.
The literal translation is a disposition for the empire.
Okay. Or the division of the empire.
It says disposition.
Ordinatio. I don't know.
You're so far over my head right now.
I'm so sorry. I did not mean to confuse you.
So confused.
But basically in can't think of the word.
Francia? Middle Ages?
No, it was not going that route at all. No.
Law.
You're just so way off from where I was trying to go.
I've distracted you.
Separate from Salic law?
Yes.
Can't think of the word.
There's a term. We did our research, guys.
Got nothing. So, differently from Salic law, which is how land has been divided.
So traditionally, they divided land amongst the siblings.
In separation from tradition. That's where I was going. Separating from tradition rather than dividing his kingdom by Salic law, after his near-death experience, he decides to, in essence,
I heard decide. But maybe you said design.
I don't know. He decides, in separation from tradition, to have what is essentially a will.
Yes.
Of how to divide his kingdom amongst his living sons.
He foresaw the chaos that ensued after Merovingian after Merovingian, after his own father had to fight off for his land, that this just isn't working. And he didn't really see it until he saw an untimely death where I still have all of my kids living, and what happens if I die? They're all young, and I want to make sure they're taken care of.
And the chaos in the empire, when you're constantly like, this guy died, now we're dividing it this way. Now everybody dies, so it's all one big, empire again. Oh, wait, now he dies, and there's 5 sons, so let's divide it up again. Like, it gets very chaotic.
Can you imagine someone reigning for 3 years and then getting killed off, and now you've got a whole different... Like at one point you were a part of this country, now you're part of this country, now you're part of this country, now you're back to the original country.
Exactly.
Like
very
it's insanity.
Confusing. Very, very confusing.
I can't imagine that.
No. So he comes up with Ordinatio Imperii, which is
the disposition for the empire.
That's not where I was going, but essentially what is in this quote unquote will is his opinion
of how the map should be split up. So where he wants his kingdoms to go. He's already got his kids assigned places. Like we talked about Louis, how he was assigned when he was a child at 3 years old to go to Aquitaine. So he's already broken out his empire amongst his kids and where he wants them to go. And this specifically lays out a path. So in it, he crowned his son Lothair co-emperor, and also he took over like this middle south section.
But the majority
of Italy, and all of Italy.
Majority of
Francia?
Of the empire. He has the majority of the empire. He has the
biggest stakehold. And then the rest of it is divided amongst his other sons at this point with his first wife.
Yes.
And we get into some hairy business after that, don't we?
So, first wife, Ermengarde, dies. as wives do. So he remarries a woman named Judith.
Judith.
Clarissa thinks she's very interesting.
Here's the thing. So, Lewis was very close to his first wife.
And by
Ermengarde.
Lewis, I believe you mean...
Louis. Louis. What? Louis. Hot dog.
Jesus.
It's just, I don't know. I said it right the whole time I'm doing the studying. And then actually...
Were you studying out loud?
No. Which is why when it actually comes out of my mouth, it's just wrong.
Louis
was very close to his wife, who had been involved in policy making, and it was rumored that she had played a part in her nephew's death, which we just skimmed over, and believed his own... So here's why I struggle with life stuff.
She struggles in life.
That's also true.
But she has me and her husband to really help keep her on track.
I really do. I'm very lucky. He believed that her death was divine retribution for that event. And it took many months for his courtiers and advisors to finally convince him to remarry, but he eventually did.
So basically, what happens is he has a cruel and unusual punishment for said nephew.
Yes.
And he believes his wife's death is punishment for this cruel and unusual punishment. So he then self-punishes.
Yep.
While his advisors and courtiers are saying, no, you need to remarry. You've got to remarry. So he remarries Judith.
Mm-hmm. And Judith, let me tell you a little bit about Judith.
Tell us.
Caitlin finds uninteresting.
I don't know that it's worth mentioning, but...
So while most girls in the Carolingian world were married in adolescence, with 12 years old being like the minimum, Judith was 22 when she married the 41-year-old Louis. So like many of the royal marriages of the time, Judith was selected prior to the marriage through a bridal show.
Oh, like a fashion show.
Let me just show you all of my lovely qualities.
You have to learn the catwalk.
It's like the invention of like Miss America in my mind.
I have to agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's a catwalk for women.
So he chose her, and some say that after inspecting the noble maidens who were brought to him from his court from all of the districts, he chose her. As I try to read rampantly ahead, where did I put that note?
He chose her because
she was lovely.
She was very attractive.
Extraordinarily beautiful, intelligent, and had musical ability. Yeah. Or he had his eye on another prize, aka her geographical political advantages that her family offered, which is more likely.
Yes.
I feel like the bridal show also showed off like a map. These are the things you will gain.
Here's where I'm from, and here's my dowry. I hit my mic again.
These are the places you can also own. Check out my dowry. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
So he marries Judith, who, according to Clarissa, is very important. According to me, of little consequence.
I thought that bit was interesting.
Why is that, other than the catwalk, why is that different than any other?
Catwalk. I don't find things like that about other people.
However,
did you talk about Bernard and his extreme punishment? Did you read what it was?
I mentioned his extreme punishment. We did not go into detail, but while he was...
Eyeballs were gouged out.
Yes. So
he
while
suffered
he
for
was
2 days.
Purging the court, he decided this particular person should not be killed, but rather have his eyeballs gouged out and then allowed to live. However, they were so brutally gouged out that he only survived 2 days.
Ugh.
So he
That's
then
what he
believed
felt
his
so bad about.
first wife died as a punishment. And then later on... later on, he actually publicly served penance
Yes, he did.
which then led to him being dethroned.
Yes. So he made up with his 3 younger brothers during that time, and his public penance was seen as a weakness. The Franks were not on board with their king.
They lost all faith.
Yes, because to them, what he had done were considered minor offenses for a king.
Well, there was one big one, and Bernard was the big one, but he tacked on all of these minor things that he essentially felt guilty for. Mm-hmm. He tacked them all on, and they really were at the time considered very minor. Mm-hmm. And so he lost face big time for apologizing for kingly decisions.
Things that should not have typically taken notice by him. He's a king. So he's above those things.
Personally,
he has to make these hard decisions.
He felt guilt for them, but when you admit guilt as a king, you show weakness. So,
especially during this time.
So he was actually dethroned for a time.
Yes, he was.
After this public show of remorse for his decision making as a king, mostly for as it applies to Bernard. But he does come back.
He does. So that happened during the First Civil War. But before that, his child was born, Charles the Bald.
With Judith, the second wife.
You know why he's called Charles the Bald?
Because he was born with no hair?
Nope. It was a joke. Because he was so hairy.
Ew, that's funny. And weird all at the same time.
I had to know, so I looked it up. And they speculate, because all of his statues and images, like, he's got a full head of hair. And he's like, they think that it was like a side stab at little brother, that everyone called him Charles the Bald. Mm-hmm. Not actually that bald.
The opposite of bald.
What about the people, because eventually there is someone who is called something the Freckled. I wonder if he was freckled.
I'd say that the chances are high that there were actually freckles. Anyway.
So, in 830, the First Civil War was sparked because he gave Alemannia to our bald fellow.
Rather than
leaving it with his son, Lothair.
So he has initially, with this Ordinatio Imperii, divides the kingdom up between his 3 sons. However, he then marries Judith, has another son, and he's like, no, wait, never mind. I want to redo this again.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sit well.
I need to adjust the will.
Yeah.
Nobody's okay with that.
There's another boy.
There's a whole other girl. We just know, like, we're not changing a thing. I meant wife.
Yes.
He has a whole other wife, a different kid, and they just didn't want to make any changes. Although I don't think they would have made changes if they had another sibling anyway. I think the brothers were happy with the way things were distributed at that time.
But they were unhappy when he tried to make changes with new wifey, new son.
Right. So while he was making his penance, he actually released a bunch of people from the monasteries, which caused a lot of problems because they then went to their respective kingdoms and whispered in some ears, and Lothair then accuses Judith of having committed adultery with Louis's godson Bernard of Septimania.
Septimania, which just sounds to me like a disease.
It does, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So he even suggests that Charles is not Louis's true heir. It is actually Bernard. So, with the loss of his closest counselors, because everyone around Louis has now left because they saw what happened to Bernard, his eyes got gouged out. Yes. So now they don't lean on their king anymore because they're like, we're going to get out of here before anything else happens. And I had a thought. We're getting there. Okay. While he was away fighting these frontier wars, he and his wife were gone and on their way back to deal with Lothair fighting. They got captured. Yeah. She was sent off to a monastery and was forced to make an oath of innocence or something. I couldn't quite figure out what that was, but it happened. And Louis then convinced his other 2 sons to take his side again and turn against Lothair and promise them extra land in return. So Lothair calls everybody to court to try to sort things out. And then his brothers who were on his side show up with armies to say, release dad. And also, you're getting the boot. You don't have as much land anymore. We have most of your land. Bye-bye, Lothair.
Bye-bye.
Although he's not really bye-bye because, like we said earlier, he wanted to he wanted to give penance because he felt bad. So he doesn't want to kill off anyone else, even if it's an accidental blinding.
Right.
And
but sorry, that was an accident.
that wasn't the outcome we were looking for. They're all horrible outcomes. What did you think would happen?
Well, he did blind him rather than kill.
Straight up have him killed.
Right. He was originally sentenced to death, and then it was commuted to blinding.
Just like
Which
give him a
killed
really
him.
nasty scar on the face. So it just...
No, it's like full blown like eyes.
No, I mean like just like cut. Like nasty scar. You don't have to cut the eyes out. The point was that he wouldn't be...
gouged him out.
I looked it up.
Oh.
That's how they get rid of the eyes back then in the medieval ages. They take it out with it.
Medieval age.
Yep, that one. Mm-hmm. They take knives or a hot dagger.
Pop him out.
Yeah. It was really gross. There are some rabbit trails you shouldn't go down, people.
Shouldn't.
Anyway. So then the Second Civil War broke out. And that was stirred up because Pepin's son came to court. Because his son Pepin came to court and was so poorly received that he left against his father's wishes, deeply offended. So everybody gets upset.
Of course. Obvi.
But very quickly, in 836, everybody made peace. And Lothair was left alive at this point, but ruling Italy. He also joined against his father for the second time in the Second Civil War. And in 836-37, the Vikings appear.
Dun, dun, dun.
Did you see the Vikings? They terrorized and sacked certain areas and went up the Rhine. And their king, Rokier?
Rorik?
Oh, thank you. Demanded the Ware Guild. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
A Ware Guild is a man price. According to Wikipedia, a man price was established on a person's life, paid as a fine or compensatory damages to the family when that person's life is taken or otherwise injured.
Huh. So the Viking guy demanded that some of the followers be killed on the previous expeditions before Louis mustered a massive force and then marched against them. They fled, but it would not be the last time that they visited the northern coasts. In the Third Civil War, Louis crowned Charles king of all Alemannia and Burgundy, which is basically taking more land
Germany.
From his
Germany.
He's basically taking more land from his co-emperor Lothair again, which caused everybody to jump into a big revolt. So Louis the German especially got mad because, as you said, Alemannia was German.
Charlemagne.
Yeah.
That was like Italian and French all at the same time.
But this time, Lothair wised up. He joined his dad's side.
Yeah.
And said...
Join the winning side for once, buddy.
It's time to do some sucking up because I'd like my land back.
Yes. I was just kidding, Daddy.
I'm sorry.
Before you die, could I have my inheritance back?
And in the end, it definitely paid off for him. So he redivided his kingdoms at the end of the Third Civil War. And Louis the German got Bavaria. Lothair got to pick between West and East Francia and chose West Francia because it also included Italy. And Charles the Bald defaulted to Western Italy. That doesn't make sense.
Western Francia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Lothair chose Eastern. Mm-hmm. Charles defaulted to Western.
Yes. So now, 4 years later, 840, Louis the Pious fell ill after his third civil war, and died June 20th of 840. And he pardoned his son, Louis,
The German.
for his misdeeds.
He did.
The other two were not present at his death.
Or they would have been pardoned too. I mean, it's probably more serious than that, but
Yes. So we'll get into a little bit what happens after Louis's death in the next episode. Our next episode is going to be two-parter because of the complexity of this.
3 sons still alive at the end of their father's reign.
And the final Ordinatio Imperii. Louis was buried in the Abbey of St. Arnold, which we were going to have a St. Arnold cider. However, that did not happen. So pretend it's here. In Metz.
It's there in spirit, right?
Right here. We're so glad to be back. So excited. Do you have any other Louis details you want to share?
So he died June 20th,
I said that.
840,
Said that already.
at the age of 62.
62. I did not say that. It's old for that age.
It's very old.
Yeah.
Like, that's a
For
big
that
deal.
time. Old for that age.
Yeah. I mean, he made
All
up
for
with
that time.
everybody. Mm-hmm. It's a good life.
Yeah.
He tried to make everything good and better, and he tried to give everybody a clear line of succession, and it just didn't pan out. We will find out more about it next week.
A bit complex. But so we do have a relevant tidbit,
We do.
as long as it's a quick one.
We'll see. So, we are discussing today. Oh, relevant
Tidbit.
tidbits. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're relevant.
Tidbit.
Da 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 da.
Okay.
Did you click on the link?
No, I wanted to
Click
be
the link.
surprised. Oh, I have to read, don't I?
You pretty much always have to read, but I will introduce it.
Okay.
See, I find them and then I make her read them out loud because, as you've seen, my reading out loud skills are subpar compared to Caitlin's.
Okay.
So, this week's relevant tidbit comes from livescience.com. 12 Bizarre Medieval Trends.
By
By-
Frances White.
She jumped on in there.
I wanted to be a part of it.
She did.
In All About History magazine, written on September 23rd of 2019.
Ooh. Point number 1, animal court. And there is a lovely picture, which you cannot see. Sorry about that. We'll get
share
there
it with you one day.
one day. There's a picture of a rooster with an egg and a bunch of mice.
Rooster in a 3-walled cage with an egg. Roosters don't lay eggs, by the way. And mice
Entertain me,
with
Caitlin.
parchment. All right. Number 1, animal court. Life in medieval times could be tough. And this didn't just apply to humans. Just like their 2-legged owners, all manner of animals from livestock to insects were put on trial if suspected of breaking the law. There are records of at least 85 animal trials that took place during the Middle Ages, and the tales vary from the tragic to the absurd, as described in the book, The Criminal Prosecution and Capital Punishment of Animals by E.P. Evans, E.P. Dutton and Company, 1906. By far, the most serial offenders were pigs.
What?
Accused and convicted of chewing off body parts and even eating children. Most were found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging or being burned at the stake.
It's a pig.
In 1386, a convicted pig was dressed in a waistcoat, gloves, drawers, and a human mask for its execution. It wasn't just pigs that felt the sting of the law, though. In 1474, a court found a rooster guilty of an unnatural crime of laying an egg.
Oh my.
Unwanted rat. I think he was a rooster, a hen pretending to be a rooster, obviously.
Probably.
Unwanted rat.
Or the hen set him up.
Or he was a...
The hen set him up.
hen
They got
rooster.
into a mad.
Maybe he
They
was
got into a
both.
mad.
They got into a mad.
fight. And the hen tossed the egg over there and was like, look what he did. There's something wrong with that guy.
Unwanted rats often found themselves on the receiving end of a strongly worded letter asking them to leave the premises. And curiously enough, there was a trial of dolphins in Marseille in 1596.
What?
However, not all of the trials ended in brutality. One donkey, which found herself the victim of unwanted sexual advances, was proclaimed innocent after a strong recommendation from a convent's prior, declaring her to be a virtuous and well-behaved animal. That escalated quickly. Thank you, Clarissa, for allowing me to read that on air. Thank you very much.
Here's the thing. I find stuff and then I don't read the whole thing because it's funnier that way.
Yep. Hilarious. Hilarious.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you for listening. We're so excited to be back and ready to drop weekly episodes again.
We are so ready,
so
you guys.
So get ready.
Yes.
So this episode today is...
Today we are recording on June 13th, but it will be releasing
July
5th on a Sunday.
5th. And we'll be back next week with a new episode.
Yes, we will. It'll be a 2-parter. We're looking forward to it.
You can find us on Facebook,
Instagram,
Twitter.
I did activate Twitter. I even sent a tweet.
She tweeted. Yeah.
I did a thing.
Look at that.
You're welcome.
You now can find this YouTube video on our network,
AVersion TV. Check us out. Definitely hit like and subscribe. Hit all of the buttons.
Any
places.
platform, just click all of the buttons.
Yes, please.
It helps us out immensely.
And leave a comment if you like the video, if you like what we said, if you wanted to make fun of me for the
corrections. We love correction avenues.
Yes.
Clarissa loves correction
especially correction avenues because we haven't done one in a long time. So please.
Because we haven't done an episode in a long time.
Also because we haven't been wrong in a while.
That's not accurate.
It's not accurate.
Please.
But if you do leave a comment, we'll give a shout out in the next time we record.
Always.
Record. Yep.
And we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Thanks for listening.
Toodles.
Bye.
Bye.